Planning Committee.
Just loading, sorry.
Sorry, hold on.
There we go.
Yeah. You ready? Okay, so welcome to the Planning Committee of 5th of February 2025. My name is Councillor Dee Martin and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. We've just gone live with a slight delay on live stream, so welcome to anyone who's listening online as well. So just for your information, the active participants in the room are the Planning Committee, which are on both sides of myself, and the planning officers who are at the front table with me. They will be providing support to the committee and also presenting the applications tonight. We've got 3 items. We'll be taking them in the order as they appear on the agenda, we'll talk a little bit more about those when we get to them. But now I'm just going to move to go through the agenda. So, apologies for absence. Don't think we've got any. Urgent matters. I'm not aware of any. Declarations of interest. No. Matters to be considered in private. I'm not aware of any of those. Minutes of the previous meeting, which was 15th of January 2025. Are they agreed? Agreed. Okay, so I'll sign those off. Site visit attendance. So councillors that attended the site visit were Councillor Coley, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Padder, Councillor Wall, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Rice, Councillor Conti and myself. And we had apologies from Councillor Sahota, Councillor Mahmood, Councillor Hamidi, and Councillor Busuttil. Thank you. Okay.
I had apologies too.
I did not say you, sorry, Councillor Raza. Missed you out. So we can now move on to our first item, which is actually 2 items which we've put together, item 1 and 2. So just to do a little bit of explaining on this. So the officer is going to present the items together but sequentially. And once the officer's finished, we will take the speakers. I've been led to understand that we're going to allow 2 speakers because technically there are 2 items that are opposing. But I think neither of those speakers indicated that they had a preference for 1 or 2. So we're just going to assume that you're speaking on both items. We will then have the speaker for the applicant. We'll then come back to the committee and we'll take questions on item 1. Then item 2, if there are any more questions. We will then go into the debate again on item 1, and then on item 2, if there are any more issues. And then we will go to the voting on each item separately. Item 2 is dependent on item 1, so should item 1 fall, then we won't vote again, but otherwise there will be 2 votes. So having hopefully not confused everyone with that, and I will I'll hand over to the officer, but just to let the speakers know, once we get to that point, I'll let you know and explain what you need to do and come forward to these seats in front of us. Thank you. So, Joel.
Good evening, members. Hybrid planning consent was previously approved by committee, which involved full planning permission for phases 1 and 2 of the development and outline consent for phases 3 and 4 of the development. The first application this evening seeks to amend the parameters of the original outline consent, and the second application involves a reserve matters for phase 3 of the development. As Councillor Martin advised, the committee should be aware that the approval of reserve matters is dependent on the approval of the first item as well. So in order to approve the second item, you would need to approve the first item. The image on the screen shows a phasing plan for this scheme and the elements of the master plan which have full planning permission or outline consent. Since the approval of the original outline application, there have been changes to fire safety regulations that have necessitated the need to amend the parameters of the original outline consent. There's also the opportunity to improve the scheme through the rearrangement of Block 2F within Phase 3 to move the main building away from the railway embankment and closer towards Bolley Lane. The majority of the changes occur within Phase 3 of the development. The most significant changes to the parameter occur in Plot 2F, where the main building was proposed adjacent to the railway embankment. Due to buildability issues, given its proximity to the railway embankment, the building has been positioned further towards Bolley Lane to adjoin the colonnade structure that runs the full frontage of the site. This necessitates changes to the original access route through the site to the rear, as well as the refuse and servicing strategy, with these parameters also proposed to be amended. So just as a bit of a summary, you can see on the left-hand side where the building was located towards the rear of the site. As that would be coming forward, the access would move further to the rear of the site. Similar with refuse and parking as well. The proposal necessitates changes to the AOD heights within the scheme, which are measurements above mean sea level. This is a result of a further land survey revealing inaccuracies in the original survey. As the ground level AOD was 0.4 metres higher than the advised in the original scheme, proposal would increase the AOD heights of each of the buildings by the same amount universally across all buildings to compensate for this. There is also minor changes to the AOD heights within Plot 2D and 2E to increase the height of the parapet wall. Again, in the context of the wider scheme, there will be no perceptible increase in height. The proposed amendments include a number of improvements to the scheme as a whole, including the uplift in the amount of open space by 1,688 square metres. The proposal results in an uplift in the number of units by 31, requiring an amendment to Condition 8 to the original permission. The uplift will result in Phase 3 collectively delivering 688 homes, which is still within the allowable 700 homes as outlined within the description of development for the original permission. The original scheme would have delivered 657 homes, and the difference between the quantum of development outlined within the original Condition 8 and the total of 700 homes is just to allow a bit of flexibility within the scheme. The uplift in homes within a highly sustainable brownfield site is supported by the London Plan and Ealing Council planning policy. Affordable housing would continue to be provided at 50% when calculated by habitable room, in line with the existing permission. The tenure split is generally in line with what was secured under the original application, and in due course, the proposed development of Phase 4 will be brought forward so that the affordable housing provision across both phases is compliant with the existing Section 106 agreement. Provision of a significant amount of affordable homes within this scheme will make a meaningful contribution to Council's objectives of delivering genuinely affordable homes across the borough. The committee report also refers to Application 2, which is the Reserve Matters application relating to Phase 3 of the development, which comprises Plot 2D, 2E and 2F. Plots 2C and 2B form part of Phase 4 and will be subject to a future Reserve Matters application. The proposal has been assessed against the Design Code as well as the London Plan and Ealing's design guidance. The heights of the buildings are in line with the amended parameters and generally consistent with the original approved outline consent. The differing heights within this phase of development provide variance and an undulating appearance within the skyline. Development is formed of differing building typologies with two bookend buildings at either side, which frame the three mansion-style buildings within the middle. The buildings adopt a variance in tone and materiality whilst exhibiting a cohesive design language that provides strong relationship with the overall built form. Subtle changes within the base, middle and top of the building provide visual interest, having a positive impact on the character and appearance of the area. A key feature of this phase of development is the colonnade structure that runs the full length of the plot. This provides a welcoming contemporary pedestrian environment with commercial spaces and residential entrances located within the arches that continue along the full facade. This also provides a design link to the transport and industrial heritage of the site. The proposal provides for good quality living conditions with new homes meeting or exceeding the minimum standards outlined within the London Plan. All residents would have access to their own private amenity space, and the buildings have been designed to provide secondary aspects where possible. The proposal includes a significant amount of communal and public space that will serve the new community, as well as those existing and emerging around the site. This includes a new public square shown on your screen to the south of Plot 2F, which comes about as a result of the amended parameters. So the committee report does go through these individual amenity areas in quite in detail, but I'll just skim through them here. So we do have Stanhope Square. publicly accessible to all, located at the junction of the Acton Works Access Road and Bolley Lane. We then have a wildlife garden between two of the buildings, which will be accessible from the railway to the rear and also from the residential properties also. A rock garden, which the focus of this space is primarily for children's play space, but it's also usable for all. Obviously provides a lot of integrated children's play space into the landscape. A key feature of the development is the community garden, which will be publicly accessible. It does have a slope through the site, so you can notice a zigzag sort of pathway going up there, which will allow people to dwell and enjoy the space, but also have a direct route through stairs to the top. And further along is a mountain camp. This has a feature of this space is to provide some small mounds within the space to allow children to be able to view the passing trains. In terms of green infrastructure, the proposal is fully compliant with urban greening factor. It also complies with biodiversity net gain. However, as in outlined within the report, there's no requirement to actually do this. The original scheme involved the removal of 68 individual trees, 4 tree groups and 8 hedgerows. As across the development, the proposal would re-provide 255 trees. The proposal will provide the necessary requirements for disabled parking, and otherwise the development would be car-free. Compliant cycle parking is proposed to facilitate a modal shift to more sustainable forms of transportation. And the reserve matters are considered to be acceptable and accordingly recommended that application be approved. So the recommendations are: application 1, grant the material amendments subject to section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act, also subject to conditions and the completion of a deed of variation to the original section 106 agreement. And the recommendation for application 2, the reserve matters application, is to approve the reserve matters subject to conditions. I'll also refer members to the briefing note, which outlines the changes to the recommended financial contributions. It also provides an additional condition to the variation application for a bird hazard management plan in response to Heathrow's comments. It provides one additional objection which was received since the publication of the committee report, and also provides some additional clarifications on the report when referring to the number of stories within the development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we're now ready to take the speakers, the objectors. Just to let you know that you'll be given 3 minutes each. We will let you know when there's about 30 seconds to go, just so you get a bit of a warning. And perhaps we'll just take you in alphabetical order. So Councillor Biddulph first, or would you rather do it the other way around? Okay, that's fine. So once you're settled, let us know and we'll start the timer. There's a little button to. Thanks, Miriam.
Great, all right, okay. I'm Vivian Wood, resident in Mill Hill Estate for 30 years. I object to these proposals for my community, whose limited attendance at this meeting comes from their feeling that their objections will not be heard. I've read relevant reports and academic papers, and I've consulted with residents in preparation for this meeting. We argue that what you say this development adds to our community does not compensate for what it takes away, and we add to previous objections. These proposals illustrate a general absence of consideration of the effects on the established community. Proposed green spaces deflect attention from the inappropriateness of the buildings themselves. Residents do not want excessively tall buildings. The green spaces you propose do not compensate. We object because there is a proven link that that high-rise developments you propose can increase anxiety and depression, and for some serious psychiatric illness for residents living in this type of accommodation. For children, there's an impact on their cognitive development. Local residents are psychologically affected as their local environment closes in on them. Planning decisions like this create sustained increase in demand on struggling mental health and other services. Families in high-rise lack vital contact with other families and children, isolated in their own accommodation. And the chair of the London Assembly himself wrote, high density, medium to low rise models can work more easily for families, enabling access to communal or individual gardens at lower stories. So high density accommodation should not exceed more than 5 stories, as evidenced in developments across Europe and other world cities, and in Hackney, where high-rise proposals have been abandoned in the light of such evidence. There will be a catastrophic effect on the character of Acton. Catastrophe has already occurred with other local developments. I remember a time when developments were low or medium rise, homes had gardens or balconies, and tenant well-being was high. Focus in your proposals on the positive impact of home ownership on well-being manipulates the data. Private ownership is linked to positive well-being, but not the ownership of high-rise. The locality will become overcrowded.
30 seconds.
You still lack discussion of the paucity of infrastructure, health, transport and educational services. Unpleasant wind tunnels created in streets. South Acton suffers this. And why Acton? Why not spread it across the borough? High rise for accommodating population growth in cities is not uncontroversial. The Acton boom in apartment construction leaves a legacy for future generations, for the children our community helps to raise. You show a failure of will to provide accommodation that prevents discomfort, dissatisfaction.
That's the 3 minutes, I'm afraid.
Enough.
Thank you. So, the second speaker like to come forward. And again, when you've settled, let us know and we'll start you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Councillor Joanna Biddulph, representing Hounslows residents in the Gunnersbury Park Garden Estate Conservation Area, which runs alongside this development and Chiswick generally. I have 3 main points: the impact of the development, pressure on infrastructure, and risks to the Gunnersbury Triangle Nature Reserve. First, impact. There's a minimal difference in height between this application and its predecessor, that's accepted. Regardless, the development will have a profound effect on my residents living in low-rise, 2-storey houses. Many will be overlooked and will lose morning sunlight. This point has not been taken seriously. Second, pressure on infrastructure. Thousands more people will need to see GPs, nurses, etc., already under strain with appointments weeks ahead. What is the Section 106 allocation of 260,000 to NHS Property Services for, and how will it benefit existing and new residents here? There's a Section 106 allocation of 195,000 for Uxbridge Road and Gunnersbury Lane improvements. Uxbridge Road is a long way away. Gunnersbury Lane is at the top of Bollow Lane. To the left is the junction with Princess Avenue, where the dangerous road layout means parked lorries block the view of my residents. Drivers emerging onto Gunnersbury Lane cannot see vehicles coming from the right. The 2 councils have been talking about changes to aid visibility. Will this payment cover all of that? If not, there needs to be a reallocation of funding. Residents have been asking for decades. On public transport, a bland statement about new trains and greater frequencies on the Piccadilly line doesn't recognise that these long-standing promises keep on being postponed by TfL. No improvements are planned for the District line, which delayed my journey tonight by 20 minutes. The E3, 70, 440 and N11 buses need to run more frequently too. Far more is needed than the Section 106 allocation of 255,000 for TfL bus route improvements, which I suspect means new bus stops along Bollow Lane, not improved services to meet new demand. Third, flooding and risk to the Gunnersbury Triangle Nature Reserve. This is a serious concern as the bottom of Bollow Lane near Edmund's house already floods. This will get worse, as will the risk of effluent flowing into the nature reserve, including its ponds. The officer's report acknowledges
30 seconds.
Thank you, that Thames Water Network reinforcement works are likely to be required. And again in quotes, any enforcement works identified will be necessary to avoid flooding and/or potential pollution incidents. What has Thames Water said it will do? Can there be a condition that Thames Water must improve the flood sewage infrastructure before the development is occupied to prevent flooding into the Gunnersbury Triangle Nature Reserve? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So now we have the speaker from on behalf of the applicant. You would normally also get 3 minutes, but as there's been 2 speakers, it's entirely up to you how you want to manage the time, but you could have up to 6. Okay.
Good evening, committee. My name is Martin Scholar and I'm Head of Planning for Barratt London, the applicant for the Bollow Lane site, together with Places for London. Barratt London is part of the Barratt Group, the largest house builder in the UK. We have a strong track record of success in the capital, delivering around 2,000 new homes per year. We are proud of our recent work in Ealing, and as some of you will be aware, we've recently completed our Western Circus development, which provides a mixture of affordable and private homes, together with a new Lidl, and we're on site at Cloister Corner on Western Avenue, where we're delivering 300 new homes, including 35% affordable housing. My speech relates to both applications before you tonight. Places for London secured a hybrid planning permission in 2021 to redevelop the site running between Bollow Lane and the railway line, south of Acton Town Station. As you've heard, the planning permission comprised up to 900 new homes, 50% affordable accommodation, replacement train crew accommodation building, new public spaces and pedestrian and cycle routes linking Acton and Chiswick, and spaces for new and existing businesses. The permission was for buildings ranging in heights between 8 and 18 stories on plots 2D to F. It is therefore important to note that the principle of development, together with height and massing parameters, has already been established through the hybrid permission. The planning permission has been implemented and we're about to start building the first phase of 195 homes at the southern end of the site, and the proposed applications before you tonight relate to a later phase of delivery. We are conscious of the objections received, but would reiterate that the principles of this development have been established and the applications before you tonight seek to make minor amendments. I'd like to stress to the committee the benefits of the proposals for the borough and the local community. We will create a beautiful new place on a currently underused and unattractive site. It will be opened up to the community and integrated with Acton Gardens and the wider context. We will deliver up to 900 new homes, meeting local needs and helping achieve Ealing's housing target. 50% of these new homes will be affordable, a far higher proportion than most large housing schemes achieve. The affordable housing will be provided in a mix of London affordable rent, London living rent and shared ownership. There'll be generous and attractive open spaces and landscaping at the heart of the proposals, including a new green pedestrian focused route along the lengths of the site. We will plant 250 new trees and will be highly energy efficient, utilising green energy, and healthy active travel will be encouraged. As you've heard, our urban greening factor of 0.47 exceeds the guideline of 0.4, and our biodiversity net gain is 126%. The guideline is 10%. The scheme will also provide new spaces for local businesses along with new shops. There'll be an estimated 500 jobs created during construction and new jobs created when the development is completed. And finally, there'll be over £4.5 million in Section 106 contributions and at least 1.7 million in mayoral seal contributions. Very much hope that we can count on your support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so before I open it up to the committee, I'm just going to go back to the officer and see if you want to make any comments on what you've heard from the objectors.
Yeah, a lot of the comments in objection are relating to the scheme as a whole. However, what I would request that you focus on tonight is the variations to that consent that I've outlined. I'll take a few points here that in respect to mental health and high density living, that may be the case for some people, but that's not the case for all people. The scheme will provide very high quality green spaces that were referred to as well. These sort of spaces, as someone who lives in a similar space like this is a place where you meet other members of the community. So these are the design elements in this are to foster a sense of community in these areas where children play with other children and those people meet other families. So there is aspects of high density living that is suitable for some people, but maybe not suitable for all. In terms of daylight and sunlight, that was mentioned by Councillor Biddulph. That is addressed in the report there. There's no significant change to the scheme in that respect. A lot of point was talking about the contributions. So the contributions were already there. All we are really able to do is make proportionate increases based on what they are actually proposing. 260,000, for example, may not employ a doctor or build a doctor's surgery, but with all the other developments cumulative in the area, those funds can go together to provide something more meaningful in the future to the NHS, but ultimately the decisions will be up to them. There was a comment in regard to putting a condition on Thames Water to make some upgrades. So we cannot do that. Thames Water are not a party to this application, so we can't condition another party to undertake works as a result of this consent.
Thank you. I'm just going to open it up now to the committee. Does anyone want to ask any questions, the officers? Councillor Conti.
Thank you. It was just really just to follow up on the Thames Water point, and about obviously we can't put a condition on, but the report does say that Thames Water network reinforcement works are likely to be required to accommodate the proposed development. Do we know, have they committed to that? Is that going to happen, or are we just assuming or hoping that will?
I'm just going to take another question from Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. The objector raised that point about the bus stop. So can you just clarify that the new bus route or new bus will go in the proposed development on the parallel road, which is being proposed in the application, and it will cover all the way in a parallel to one end to another end? That's the first thing. Second is, you said the 255 trees, additional trees, they will be all on site or they will be off-site contribution? Thank you.
Do you want to answer those first? Yeah.
So with respect to Thames Water, I imagine if they do need to do works, they will levy the developer for those works. If they are the people responsible for creating or necessitating those works, I can't really comment on that personally myself. But if those works are necessary, it will be Thames Water's responsibility to undertake those works, and they may seek contributions from the developer separately in order to do that. In terms of Councillor Mahmood, there's no new bus route proposed, but what TfL usually do is they request contributions to make bus service improvements to the area, typically to take account of an increased density, so more people. It is really up to them how they decide to spend it. They might use that to purchase more buses for West London or to be used around this area. They may introduce a new route. They might consult on a new route, but ultimately the £255,000 is a request from them to undertake bus service improvements. And I'd also note a lot of the other developments on Bollow Lane, the industrial residential schemes on the other side have also contributed to that. So when you collect all that money together, you might see a significant improvement in bus service routes through the area. So that will be up to TfL, it's their decision. And in terms of the trees on site, they will all be provided on site. There's no off-siting of trees.
Sure.
I was just going to draw committee's attention to condition 56, which is about wastewater infrastructure and the requirement for confirmation to be sought from Thames Water. And it does actually stipulate that no property shall be occupied until these things are agreed. So I just thought I'd draw your attention to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I think, like Councillor Mahmood, I'm asking about buses and trees, so please forgive me on that. I do note, looking at page 43 of 88, there's a beautiful illustration of the proposed development, and there's actually a double-decker bus. I can't remember seeing any double-decker buses along there. So I know that, Joel, you've said that you can't really necessarily dictate to TfL what kind of improvements they make, but I wonder if that's something that we could suggest, having double-decker buses to actually ensure that these the huge number of people who might be moving into the area still get to travel efficiently and get to work on time. And also when it comes down to trees, it's very sad when we see mature trees being cut down because it's mature trees that actually help with the climate emergency. They're the ones absorbing the carbon, and we are going to have a lot of new trees in. So I suppose my concern would be that there will be an ongoing plan to make sure those new trees do get to reach maturity and really benefit the environment. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah, Councillor Kelly.
I'm going to say you may want to confirm, but my understanding is that the the bridge down Bollow Lane, which is, I'm trying to think what railway service, but it has low bridges, so I think that's why there's no double deckers. Is that the case? Is my question. Yeah.
Anyone else? Because if not, I'll just pass back to Chair. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wall.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the point was made about the suitability of families living in high rise, and I think often is the case that they'll be situated in the lower floors. I just wondered if that was the case with this development too.
Councillor Rice, are you referring to a CGI image? I couldn't find the particular image you were referring to, like a computer-generated image. Okay, I assume there's a bit of creative license there, and to Councillor Kelly's point, it really is dependent on whether there are any low bridges in the area that dictate whether double-decker or single-decker buses are used through. I understand. There will be on-site managers for the site who will look after the landscaping and make sure it doesn't die. There's requirements on landscape management through the conditions as well. And Councillor Wall, generally these developments are stacked, so what is above is below. So they're not. It's not a situation where all the threes are on the ground floor and then they go up to all the ones up the top. They are generally mirror each other. And that's partially due to sound transference. You want kitchens to be above kitchens and not kitchens above bedrooms, for example. So they are distributed throughout the building. Did I get everything? Yeah.
I think you did, yeah. So I think we're going to move on to the debate now. So, but before I do that, just to confirm, any questions were about item 1 and item 2. There's nothing left, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the debate. Would anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Busuttil?
Yeah, I mean, just to say that it's already been mentioned already, what we're doing on this is voting for the amendments as opposed to the actual project itself. So whether these amendments go through tonight is it's only a matter of time before this land is built on. Now, I live 5 minutes away from this area, and I think this development will improve the area despite the tallness of the buildings. Look, the precedent has already been set by 100 Bollow Lane, that's currently there, and you've got Chiswick Park to Chiswick Business Park at the back of it. So the precedent is already there. Like I said, I think it'll be an improvement. However, my bone of contention with this, again, as I've already said, that the project is likely to go ahead with without the amendments going through, is that, and it's a shame that for TfL land, is that I find the 50% affordable a bit tenuous. So we have 20% social or London living rent, London social rent, and 30% shared ownership. So basically 80% of the scheme is probably unaffordable to most people. Now, like I said, you know, for a public limited company, I thought the emphasis would have been more, particularly given that the Mayor of London has set a target of 88,000 affordable homes right across London, that on its own land it can produce more affordable or truly affordable homes. But it is what it is. And despite that, I'm probably likely to vote for it.
Councillor Kelly?
I thought there might have been other people before me. I wasn't on the original planning application, so I'm sort of, despite understanding the nuance of what we're doing today, I'm sort of looking at it as one project. And I think it's very ambitious, and I think the thing that struck me on the site visits is how it will integrate with what's going on in Acton Gardens, because I've always sort of felt like Acton Gardens sort of comes to an abrupt halt that side of the road, and it hasn't continued despite there being close to the station. So I'm very positive about the offer, particularly the retail offer, the outside space, the biodiversity net gain, which was a big challenge given all the mature trees, but I think the application does enough to sort of meet that requirements. I do appreciate that I'm standing in the Ealing Bollow Lane looking at it and not the Gunsbury Triangle side. I do accept that the rationale where the Hounslow residents are approaching this. But having said that, there are hundreds of thousands of sites all over the country, and even and several sites in Ealing where we've done developments by railways close to existing suburban housing, whether it's in West Ealing, whether it's in Greenford, and on the whole it works. And lots been said about high density housing, but it works for many people, and there's people I know who live in Southall who living in poor accommodation and now live in beautiful flats on the top floor and enjoyed that experience. And it's something that we haven't done enough of in London, and I think we should continue to do it. So on that basis, I'd be very happy to grant this application.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was sitting on the outline application we approved in 2021, and I'm glad that application come back again in terms of variation, and by looking at this application is much better than previous application, because these amendments and modification bring 3 or 4 new things which can be very beneficial for existing community and an external community as well. For example, there was a public square which was not there before, but by redesign that building, we are getting more bigger public square or community garden, which can be used by the existing community, and the seas of the developments are going across the road, and these peoples are living in a high-rises building opposite to the road can use this community garden. So that's the additional chair amenity in the local area. I could see the improvement in the widened footpath and active footage, and basically in terms of designing an architect point of view, if you see from one end to another end, all the arches are the designing of the frontage and all the architecture point of view is quite engaging with the road. So on the basis of these modification and variation, and on the top of that, like my colleague said, 50% affordable housing, it could have been more, as you mentioned, public limited company. But whatever we have got front of us this evening, we have to make a decision. So on the basis of these 4 or 5 benefits, I will go for that. Thank you.
Councillor Hamidi.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Busuttil has said. You know, this application, it's an approval of a reserve matter. So we are looking at, you know, even if we say no, this is going to go ahead with the original plan. So that's not going to make a difference. In in terms of, I know the objector said that they disagree with tall buildings, and reality of it is that we are in a housing crisis and we need more homes to be built. Personally, I welcome that. I have many friends that live in high rises and they have young families, and they prefer to live in tall blocks than 2-story standard houses. So you can't say nobody wants to live in these tall buildings, because people do choose to live in blocks. I welcome the increase in the number of units by 31 homes. I like that the plans to improve the public footpath, as Councillor Mahmood said, and the colonnade structure is very much welcomed. And overall, I am minded to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Similarly to Councillor Hamidi, I know the increase is actually for 31 homes that we already have pre-approval that's been granted. I also note the overall biodiversity net gain, which is actually quite significant. The design is good, I believe, in the area, and that was clear from the site visits on Saturday when we were all there, and especially if we take into account the entirety of the area and the opposite development of Acton Gardens as well, then I think it ties in nicely. And I do also note the comment on page 41 from the community review panel that was generally supportive, to what is otherwise, I quote here, I've just taken a note, a grey and hostile environment. So I think overall it will improve the area, and it does increase sort of affordable housing. Of course, the 50% is very welcome, and as we all know, we are in a chronic sort of shortage of housing right across London and the entire country, and so I'll be voting for this.
Councillor Conti.
Thank you. Thank you. So similar to others, I wasn't on the panel when the original application came in 2021. Obviously, so one of the concerns obviously was that is the height and the scale of these buildings, and I think one of the elements obviously that's already been given comprehensive approval was the 25-story element. So the elements we're looking at tonight are obviously less high than that. I think it's still a concern, but I think in an area where there's already high-rise buildings and in an area where taller buildings have already been given full approval and to be constructed, I think it slightly, in my view, mitigates the impact of that. I do have sort of, I guess, the Thames Water issue still. I think I've been reassured slightly by the fact that the homes won't be able to be occupied until those conditions are met. So I've sort of been unsure about the application, but obviously listening to it all tonight, and I feel like I'm going to vote in favour of it.
Thank you. Councillor Wong.
Thank you. I think it's a good scheme. I just wanted to point out with the affordable housing, because the concern was made about not genuinely affordable housing. I think that's coming forward in phase 4. So across the 2 developments, it will be policy compliant. So we will have 50% genuinely affordable homes. Otherwise, I think it's a good scheme. I think 688 homes are well needed, and particularly by people in the very expensive private rented sector at the moment, or people who don't have homes. So I'm tending to support the scheme.
Councillor Raza.
Well, I was on the previous committee, and I have to say that it's very welcome that a lot of our concerns have been addressed in this update, which have come back to us, and I welcome quite a few of the things that a lot of the committee have raised already. But as a product of somebody who was raised in a high-rise flat, I have to say that I have very fond memories of living in a high-rise, and our family, along with several other families, had a very happy childhood up there. So I think that that's a bit of a sweeping generalisation to say that that's what's happening. Currently, it's beyond chronic, the need for housing. So I welcome very much that there's an increase in that, and that there's an offset with the biodiversity. I think all in all, the scheme's pretty impressive.
Thank you. I think that's everyone that wants to speak. I would echo what Councillor Raza said myself. I also grew up in a high rise. I don't think it's affecting my cognitive development. You never know. But I think there are many positives to this scheme, and I won't rehearse them again because I think a lot of people have said that. So based on, I think we are complete. We'll go to the vote on item 1. So all those in favour? Okay, you counted, yeah? Yeah. Anyone against? Any abstentions? So item 1 is carried, and move on to item 2. So all those in favour? Any against or abstentions? So that's both carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we can move on to our third and final item, which is Summit House at Hanger Lane. And I'm going to hand over to, is it Gareth you do? Okay. I'm going to hand over to the officer to present on this. Just letting people leave, yeah.
Okay. Good evening, councillors. The application before you is for the redevelopment of the site known as KT Summit House. The proposal is to construct a Part 5 and Part 13-storey apart hotel building. This would provide 378 hotel rooms of varying size and would include cultural and commercial space at ground floor and lower ground floor, including a music venue and affordable workspace. This is a car-free development with a loading bay provided on site and 1 disabled bay parking provided on Royal Parade. The existing 5-storey office building on the site is vacant. KT Summit House is a brownfield site which has not been earmarked as an allocated site in Ealing's development management plan or the emerging local plan. Allocated sites provide for tall buildings, and tall buildings in this location are defined as 6 stories, 21 metres or more. Notwithstanding this, the site is located in an accessible area with a high PTAR rating of 5, which indicates excellent access to public transport. The images here show the existing site context. As you can see, the current building on the site is similar height to the adjacent buildings wrapping around Royal Parade. The surrounding area is predominantly mixed use. The site is well connected to buses in the underground. As you can see, Hanger Lane station here is less than 100 metres to the north of the site, and the nearest bus stop is on the opposite side of Hanger Lane. Neighbouring developments in the vicinity include the Stay Club student accommodation located within the Hanger Lane Granary and is currently under construction. Manhattan Business Park mixed-use development has also been granting planning permission. The site is located between 2 conservation areas but does not lie within a conservation area itself. Brunswick Conservation Area is to the west of the site and Hanger Hill Haymills Estate Conservation Area is to the east. Further objections have been made since the officer's report was published. We now have a total of 23 responses and 22 of these are objections. The key matters raised in the objections included concerns about the height of the building, traffic and parking, design, the development being out of keeping, loss of light, air quality and pollution. These and other matters raised are summarised and addressed in the officer's report. So the building design has evolved through multiple pre-application meetings with council and comments from the design review panel and the community review panel. It's also worth noting that positive feedback from these panels have been received. One of the substantial changes the applicant undertook was to step down the western shoulder of the building. This assists in relieving effects onto neighbouring properties on Brunswick Road and the Brunswick Conservation Area. As can be seen on this slide, the existing building, which is outlined in pink, is of a similar height to the proposed western shoulder of the development. Hotel rooms situated on the western elevation of the building have the potential to overlook the gardens of Brunswick Road properties. In order to overcome and minimise overlooking onto these properties and diminish the perception of being overlooked, the lower western elevation has been articulated with a sawtooth configuration directing views southward towards Brunswick Road. The sense of privacy is further enhanced via the use of opaque panels to the lower portion of the sawtooth windows. Further windows above the terrace level are here, they're coloured in green. The opaque panels and do not allow overlooking to the neighbouring properties. And the pink areas here are glazed windows with opaque panels below, which is the green here. The proposal is consistent with approved and constructed developments within the immediate area, being only 2.2 metres higher than the recently approved 13-storey student accommodation on Hanger Lane. When comparing heights from existing ground level, these two developments are higher than what is proposed. These next few slides demonstrate the proposed building is consistent with other tall buildings within the immediate area and shows how the building would be experienced in the built and emerging context. The approved Manhattan Business Park is shown here in yellow, and the partially constructed Hanger Lane student accommodation in blue. The subject site to the right appears consistent in this context. The proposed building would serve as a gateway into the Hanger Lane area. The massing and scale of the proposed development would respond to the local emerging context. This slide here shows the CGI of the proposed development from Brunswick Conservation Area. It is acknowledged that the development would be visible. However, its size is mitigated through its articulation and careful choice of materials and colours. It has been determined that development would not adversely affect the conservation area's heritage significance or the ability to appreciate its character and appearance. Therefore, the scheme is considered to result in no harm to the significance of the conservation area. After thorough consideration of the development plan and all material considerations, it is concluded the proposal makes efficient use of underutilised land. It promotes economic growth in London's visitor economy and supports intensification and mixed-use development in an appropriate, well-connected location. It is recommended that the planning permission be granted, subject to conditions and completion of Section 106 and 278 agreements. I also draw the committee's attention to the briefing note, where it is noted there was a minor mistake to the TfL bus stop fund. This should read as £50,000. Also, additional objections were received in relation to traffic and parking and loss of light. These issues have been substantially covered in the officer's report and will not be repeated again here. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we've got an objector. Is it Rosanna Fullerton? Do you want to come forward to the chairs? So as we explained to the other speakers, you've got 3 minutes. Just let us know when you want to start and we'll start the clock from then.
I represent the Birkdale Area Residents Association and the Brunswick Conservation Panel. I have also received advice from the Civic Society and the Hanger Hills Hay Mills Conservation Area Panel. The current building is unattractive, largely vacant, and described as not offering accommodation suitable for the present-day office needs. However, the height and massing of the proposed building at 13 stories would be out of place and incongruous in this location, which is not allocated as an area for high-rise buildings, nor a development site. As stated in the Tall Buildings Strategy, page 9, and page 6 in the new local draft plan, chapter 5, both documents state 6-7 story maximum height for this area. This plan has recently been submitted for examination to the planning inspectorate by the council. While the developer's planning statement may be strictly correct in saying Ealing has no legal obligation to follow the draft plan, the plan represents a clear statement of intent. It would be deplorable for the council then to immediately ignore its own guidelines. The site sits above the surrounding areas, so higher than the gyratory to the north, on the junction to the north, and on the junction with Brunswick Road that steeply falls to the west. The Brunswick Conservation Area Gateway is immediately behind the current building. Royal Parade's curving architecture is adjacent and is echoed on Ashbourne Parade on the east side of Hanger Lane, which is included in the Hanger Hills Hay Mill Conservation Area. As regard the massing and the design of the proposed building's east elevation facing Hanger Lane Hay Mills Conservation Area, it would present a monolithic rectangular tower without stepping in to mitigate the height or any other variation, while the western elevation facing the Brunswick Conservation Area presents a similar tall rectangular structure, modified only by a step down at the 5th floor level, which barely provides the height mitigation. This would be in stark contrast to the small-scale traditional buildings in the two neighbourhood conservation areas, as well as the Grade 2 listed Hanger Lane Station and Parades. The Tall Buildings Strategy, page 14, states the need to promote harmonious scale and datum of new buildings to help unify the character. This proposal does not do this.
Sorry, that's time up.
That's fine.
Thank you. We've also got a local councillor who's speaking, Councillor Oxley. If you want to come sit yourself down, you get 5 minutes. So once you tell us you're ready to go, we'll start the clock.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for permitting me to speak at this evening's meeting. My name is Jonathan Oxley. I'm an elected councillor for the Hanger Hill ward, in which the proposed tower at 100 Brunswick Road is located. My statement also represents the views of Councillor Zizimos. Turning to the development, let me say at the outset that I oppose this development. It's too big, it's architecturally without merit, hopefully you could see that, and it's completely out of keeping with the conservation area that it would overshadow. I have 5 points that I hope members will give due consideration to. First, size and bulk. The proposed tower will be 13 stories, directly contravening the council's new local plan, recently submitted to central government. This specifies a maximum height for a tower in this location of 6 stories. There's some debate whether it should be 7. The local plan also identifies a specific list of sites where taller buildings may be constructed on an exceptional basis. Surprise, surprise, 100 Brunswick Road does not appear on that list. Unelected officers are seeking to circumvent the local plan, it seems to me, by referring to the London plan instead. They want you to ignore the local plan that we passed at full council. Therefore, I appeal to you, to the members of this committee, to respect the integrity of our own local plan by rejecting this development. Elected councils make the decisions, not officers. Secondly, I have established that Ealing Council's newly appointed conservation officer, Mr. Mark Price, has not reviewed this development. Given the sensitivity of this tower's location at the gateway to the Brunswick Conservation Area, I would appeal to members to at the very least defer a decision until Mr. Price has had an opportunity to advise the committee on the tower's suitability.
Thirdly, traffic. Brunswick Road opens onto Hanger Lane. You don't need me to tell you how bad that is as traffic hotspot. At peak times, it can be incredibly difficult to turn left out of Brunswick Road onto Hanger Lane. This causes traffic queuing on a long stretch of Brunswick Road and into Sandal Road and Brunswick Gardens. Keep in mind that this is a residential and a conservation area. And it's not just me saying this. TfL are acutely aware of the problem and are currently evaluating whether a yellow box needs to be installed at the junction of Brunswick Road and Hanger Lane to enable traffic to turn into Hanger Lane more freely. Again, I would appeal to members to defer any decisions on this tower until TfL has completed its review, or better still, make any approval dependent on the installation of a yellow box. Fourth, purpose. Despite the marketing gloss, which is very impressive incidentally, it's not clear that this development will result in a hotel or an apart hotel. In fact, the proposal is for 378 rooms equipped with electric hobs and sinks. There is a material risk that this proposal morphs into a glorified HMO through the back door. The committee should consider what safeguards need to be put in place to prevent this eventuality. Finally, I would ask you to consider the architectural merit of the proposed tower. It is a slab-like construction. I defy anyone to say it's attractive, with little architectural merit. I would urge members to require that the buildings be redesigned to the height of the existing block and with an architectural style more in accordance with the buildings that surround it. Residents would also, I think, support a renovation and repurposing of the existing building. In summary, I urge councillors to stick by the local plan that full council adopted by rejecting this development. In doing so, you would be demonstrating to residents that it's councillors that make the decisions that affect our communities. Thank you very much, councillors.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we have a speaker for the application. James Penfold? Hi, thank you. So you've got 3 minutes. And again, if you let us know when you're going to start, and we'll warn you when to say so.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm James Penfold, the owner of Infinite Partners, development manager for the project, alongside our partners Ansol, the long-term owners and operators. We're an experienced team and have delivered and managed a number of hotels under various brands in London and New York. The project will be a lifestyle hotel for creators focused on the business and leisure markets. It will form a destination for the neighbourhood and will be designed forward. As long-term owners, our interests are aligned with local people to deliver a transformative impact on the neighbourhood. Over the past 18 months, we've hosted a series of consultation events, and we learned that Ealing and Hanger Lane has a rich cultural history. This led us to design spaces into the project that will help to bring people together and create a platform for creative enterprise. These spaces are ring-fenced and tied into the planning permission as a long-term commitment. The live cultural and music venue is a purpose-designed state-of-the-art venue. It will showcase live performances from comedians, musicians and artists. It will also provide a platform for talented local creatives to hone and develop their skills. The concept store and exhibition space is a dedicated space at ground floor level which will be subsidised and available for local creators to exhibit and trade their works. It will provide an important route to market for local traders. The community cafe, co-work and creative studios will also be subsidised and will be available for local residents to work in and use for events and meetings. This project will provide several hundred high-quality jobs, which we would like local people to have the first opportunity to take. It will also add circa £16 million per annum in terms of inward investment into the neighbourhood through the visitor economy. We're pleased with the officer's recommendation for approval, and we hope you agree the project will be a positive addition to Ealing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask, before I ask the officer actually to comment on any of that, I would point out to Councillor Oxley that this committee is a members' committee and we are making the decision about this application. So it is being decided by us and not by officers ultimately. But anyway, I think, would you like to come back on any of that?
Yes. So firstly, I guess the big thing in terms of the tall buildings, So yes, we understand that Regulation 19 does not allocate the site for a tall building, but Part C of Policy D9 does provide assessment criteria for tall buildings, and why we've looked back onto that. And that talks about the visual impacts, functional impacts, environmental impacts, as well as cumulative impacts, all which have been assessed in the officer's report. In terms of the massing and design, I discussed in depth the western elevation in my speech. And in regards to the eastern elevation, it has got a different design on the ground and upper floors, and this is to provide some contrast to the building so it doesn't look like a big block, and it's also viewed in the scope of a busy road. And in terms of the conservation comments, conservation area, it has been noted that the building will be visible and is read outside the townscape elements of the conservation area, but it's assessed to be read in a similar way to the emerging tall buildings within the area, and it provides a step down approach and complementary materials, as well as removing a poor quality existing building. And on balance, it's been determined that just being visible does not mean it's an adverse effect, and we have determined that there would be no harm to the heritage asset. In terms of the concern about the apart hotel turning into long-term stays, we have required a hotel management plan, and which will be conditioned as part of a Section 106. And one of those things is saying that guests can't stay longer than 90 days, and a written record has to be given to council on this. And then in transport, TfL has reviewed the application, and it is also recognised that the use of public transport in terms of buses and the tube will increase, and so financial contributions have been provided for the site. And yeah, I think that answers everything. If you've got something else to add, Gareth.
Good evening, councillors. Just like to clarify on the length of stay. As Shanti mentioned, that would be governed by the hotel management plan, but the requirement would be that any stays over a length of 90 days would be required to be reported to council on an annual basis. So with that information, we would be able to ensure that the apart hotel remains as an apart hotel and does not transform into another use such as HMOs or other see-through uses which were mentioned. So that would be managed.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to as well, because the chair and myself, together with the officers, have been looking at that very point for quite a long time, and making sure that that couldn't possibly morph into a HMO, which would be a concern because it wouldn't be compliant. But Alex, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I was just going to expand on the point around the conservation officer. It is indeed correct that our new heritage advisor has only just started in position earlier this month, and hasn't been involved in the earlier discussions on this particular proposal. But just for the committee's benefit, the assessment on conservation aspects has been undertaken by officers, but also by the GLA as well, and is commented on in their GLA stage 1 response. And officers have already advised you of the inputs from the design review panel and indeed the community review panel, but I just wanted to make it clear that the GLA have also been involved in this process and support the scheme. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to questions now. So start with Councillor Conti.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. One was on sort of the access road at the back, and so obviously I know it's a zero car development, but people often come to hotels in an Uber or being dropped off there, etc. Not everyone's going to necessarily make their way on public transport. Obviously the road, as we've heard, is very congested. I just wondered I know it talks about a travel plan in the report. I just wondered what mitigation steps can be made to help to potentially reduce impact on an already very busy road. The second thing is, in terms of the music venue, do we know what the capacity is or what we're expecting? Because if you go outside any sort of music venue, so when they close, there are usually loads of Ubers, etc. around there. we've got people aren't going to be able to stop on Hanger Lane, so they're going to be going to Brunswick Road, where they're going to be calling those, and the knock-on effect there. Do we know what the capacity is? How often the music venues plan to be in operation, and what mitigation steps could be taken for the surrounding area?
I'll just take one more. So, Councillor Hamidi.
Thank you, Chair. Have you received the ELSP, or will the applicant provide this at a later stage? Sorry, the learning and skills plan. It says it on page 116, I believe.
Okay, so I'll go back to yourself for some answers on those. Ready?
Yeah, so we've got an access plan, which I will share. I'm just bringing that up on my screen to show how that works. Okay, so they've got an existing access lane, which is shown on the left of the screen here for delivery and servicing with a loading bay. There'll also be a bike store as well. So for that, and there's also cycle parking in here as well. I think it was 17 and 18 for the hotel and for the commercial side as well. So that's another option for people to get to the site. And there's also room for, of course, like taxi drop-off areas in front of the site. But being so close to Hanger Lane and the bus stop, it is expected that that's going to be the primary method of transportation. And the capacity of the music venue, so we haven't got exactly what that is, but looking at the size of the site and how many people expected, do you?
Good evening. In terms of the capacity of the music venue, that largely depends on what is happening at the venue at any one time. If it were a comedy show, for example, table and chairs might be coming out, which would have a reduced capacity for that event. If it were live music, then it may be seated, may be standing. So point is that the capacity can vary depending on what is the event on that evening. I think there was a question on frequency, on how often it would be operating. The exact frequency, I mean, that's not something that we've looked to restrict. What is being restricted is there's conditions related to noise attenuation and how we've looked carefully about how that may impact to ensure that there's no sound transference, which would leave the venue. Obviously, there may be some in terms of comings and goings, but of course that would be limited in terms of its operating hours as well. Thank you.
And Councillor Shaw, did you have your hand up?
Oh, was there
not
one
finished,
more
sorry.
question? Yeah. In terms of, I think the question was, when is that plan being provided, or has it been provided? Was it? Okay. Yes, so it hasn't been provided at this stage, but it is in the Section 106 agreement, so it will need to be provided before construction.
Did you put your hand up, Gareth? Yeah.
Yes, I did. Thanks, Chair, for spotting. Yeah, just I'm perhaps labouring a point slightly here, but just I think it's important to clarify for the committee that any change of use, as was mentioned by Councillor Oxley in his objection, would that require, a new planning application to change it to HMO use?
Yes, it definitely would, but we're trying to cut that off. We've tried to cut that off at the past, to be honest. Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Rice?
Thank you, Chair. So I've got about 3 questions. I'm trying to be a bit close, sorry. Yes, so first of all, I mean, on that point with potential for different use, I mean, the thought was coming to my mind was what kind of market intel has gone into looking into whether there's a real kind of demand for a hotel in the area. The reason why I think that is because there is a large hotel next door, and I did a 5-minute walk back to the tube station after the site visit, and I pass 3 large hotels along the way. So my concern would be, okay, maybe we can't necessarily change of use, but hopefully we don't end up with a very tall building which can't be financially viable, which just ends up standing there doing nothing. So I just want to clarify on that. But although thinking about the actual rooms itself, I'm looking at page 52 of 79 here, and there's a kind of CGI of what a room could look like there. And I'm just very concerned about that kitchen area. You've got a double bed, so you could potentially have 2 people there. There's no table or chairs really in the illustration, so I'm hoping those are going to be provided, because the only place to actually sit down and eat is at a desk there, which has got a computer. And looking at the kitchen space itself, you've got very limited space for anything like a toaster or a kettle. So is that going to be safe to have a very tiny little bit of workspace for electrical items right next to where the sink is? Also, I mean, it's very enclosed. Is it actually going to be safe to use for cooking when food is letting off steam or whatever? It just doesn't look at all practical in any way, really, for use as kitchen space. So I just want to make sure that's not going to be causing kind of huge issues with mould and issues for people actually staying there, and people will actually be able to sit down and have a meal that they're cooking there, and there will actually be storage space as well for the food, because I can't see where a fridge might be. So I'm hoping that will actually be suitable facilities. And also another point is looking at the consultation, there's been points been made in terms of crime and policing and CCTV, that we will need to have extra provision for that. I'm not used to seeing that in planning applications. So one guess of mine is that I don't know if that's going to be an assumption because of the music and cultural venue that's going to be there, that there might be more issues. So I just want to clarify on that. And when it comes down to the music venue, Gareth has talked about issues when it comes, actually we'll talk about Gareth the officer talked about issues when it comes down to noise from the venue. The one thing that came to my mind was that even if it's underground, I mean, is there a risk that when the door is being opened or closed when people are leaving or arriving, that more noise could come up and cause a disturbance to the people in the house next door? So I just want to clarify just how well insulated is the sound going to be underground there. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was several questions. I'm going to go back to the officer on those.
So the first question in terms of the demand for the hotel, so it is in policy E10 of the London plan that we do need more visitor accommodation in London, so that has been relied on. And the use of the kitchen, a kitchenette is proposed rather than a full use kitchen, so it's not anticipated that people would be making daily meals and things in there. It's more just to assist them in their short-term stay. And the crime and policing, that's with more people in the area, particularly having like a music venue and things, that the police wanted to have CCTV installed, and also financial contribution towards that. And then the last question about the entrances, I'll just share my screen again.
Sharing the screen, I was just going to say that the police do regularly comment on planning applications, and recommendations that have been presented to planning committee quite routinely do secure contributions towards CCTV installations. And then was just going to mention that in terms of the noise mitigation, there are a whole raft of conditions in the recommendation which look at ensuring that there's no noise, particularly from like lobbies and doors and things like that. So environmental health colleagues have obviously looked at this in a great detail and made recommendations to our officers on those suitable conditions.
And then, so here, this plan is showing that you enter into the music venue, into this lobby area from the ground floor, and you go downstairs and come out here into the music venue and the gathering and then the music venue. So it's not anticipated that there's going to be like a big transfer of sound, because it's you're going down into the premise rather than being on the ground floor.
And you coming back for more, are you, Miriam?
Well, I just want to clarify, is when it comes down to the kitchen, I'm not really satisfied. That really just sounds like it's a usable kitchen, especially since there's no fridge. And I think people, especially if you're anticipating people being there more than a night or two, they're going to want to store food or have some kind of preparation, even if just for a cup of tea.
Can I answer that, Miriam? Because we did labour, again, it goes back to the HMO issue. So we're very careful to make it as minimal as possible. So there's no oven, for example, so there's not going to be full-on cooking taking place in the rooms. It's an apart hotel. It's still a hotel, so you don't typically do cooking in a hotel, but it's I suppose a little bit like self-catering, but in that sort of, you can get up in the morning, make yourself tea and toast before you get out, is the sort of idea behind it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth saying that it's something that, as you're aware from other hotel schemes, that we have been looking at in great detail with committee, and we have done quite a lot of research into this as well about what's actually being implemented, particularly in London, in terms of the hotel quality. So we've done what we can in terms of setting out the differences in the hotel management plan, which we think does give that clarity between any other uses that are not a hotel. So I think that's the best that we can do. Thank you.
So Councillor Coley, I'll get your next. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The first question which I have is, on the eastern side where the building goes up to 13 stories, I've got a concern regarding the overlooking into the properties on Brunswick Road. That's the first concern I have. The second concern I have is that this site is sitting at a much higher level to the north side of the site. And was any consideration given to this fact when accepting 13 stories on the western side? The third question which I have is, can I get some feedback on the sunlight and daylight report? Now, what effect has it actually has on the properties along Brunswick Road, and maybe also the neighbouring, well, the Parade, which is adjacent to this hotel? And the last question is, because this is being classified as an apart hotel. Apart hotel, the objective is that people stay for a longer period of time, and hence the reason why we're allowing up to 90 days, which is standard. But if someone's staying in a hotel for a longer period of time, the likelihood of him wanting to do some cooking actually increases. And I'm concerned with the room size and the facilities within the room. I don't think it's very conducive to that fact. And lastly, is there any mechanical ventilation? Because obviously there's room for mold problems, condensation. How is that, what has been done about that in the design of the actual building? Thank you.
So I will take that back to the officer, but I don't think it does differ from a hotel. I think in a hotel there's not necessarily any different restrictions on the 90 days. There are plenty of people that stay a long time in a hotel, and I mean, we've probably all done a certain element of this going on holiday and having apartments where we might have a few facilities. I've been in student accommodation where they have a few facilities. We're not talking about, we're trying to avoid people spending a long time living in this accommodation because it wouldn't be appropriate for long-term stay. So I'll just say that, but I'm just going to hand back to the officer to answer. You had quite a few points there.
So firstly, in response to your question about the eastern elevation and the views from the upper floor levels, so that goes back to what I was talking about previously with the windows in terms of some of them being blanked out with opaque glass, and then the ones that do have windows, they have opaque panels around the sides to ensure that the view is lessened from these windows here. And then the lower levels, also the terracing and the landscaping that will be part of that terracing also helps assist screening views from those floors. In response to the question about the higher level on the northern side of the site, yes, we understand that this is on like more of a hill than the others that have been consented on, but that was taken into consideration. And then, of course, looking out to viewpoints like this as part of the assessment. The sunlight and daylight report, so that showed that the existing buildings were already impacted, and this is because, say, like One Royal Parade is built already very close to the site as it is. So it was also assessed that the effects on these properties are inevitable in terms of any meaningful development would end up just taking some of their light away, but there was still plenty of windows that was getting adequate daylight into them. And in terms of the overshadowing, it was determined that all of the gardens on Brunswick Road did comply with BRE standards, and that 50% of the garden space see at least 2 hours of direct sunlight as well. And again, there is going to be some shadow cast in the morning onto some of these properties, but it's transitional and already impacted by the current development.
Can we just go back to that one elevation which shows the windows again, just so you can point out that the parts of the building which would directly face onto the gardens are in fact obscured? It'd be helpful just to point that out.
Yeah, so that was again these green panels here, the all opaque panels, and the pink, so it's only on the upper windows that have glazed windows. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Can you clarify, so the red part is the clear part, yes, is that correct? Can you clarify what is the height from the floor level to the lowest point of the red level?
Councillor Coley, as you can see on the screen here, there's a cross section of the upper floors above the terrace. Now that shows the internal floor to ceiling height of each room, and it shows that there's a lower opaque panel, which is the pink section, and are you able to zoom in on that, and the upper glazed section. And those angled lines show theoretical visibility from those windows. So I don't have the precise figure for you, but hopefully that demonstrates the height of the opaque versus the clear glazed section of the windows.
I'm gonna suggest that it's above 1.10. That's typically what would happen.
So Chair, regarding the point where you're saying that, you know, the hotel is designed for visitors to come and go, and there must be a principle why they've decided to put a kitchenette in there. So there has to be an objective of that. And one of the objectives, I would assume, I could be wrong, I would assume that it would, you know, anyone wants to have a long stay, sometimes eating out all the time is not so convenient. They might want to do some light cooking within the room, yes. So I haven't had a response to the ventilation aspect of each room.
Well, that's okay. I mean, we can't judge what other people are going to do when they get there or how long they want to stay. It's obviously going to vary, but if you think there's an issue with the ventilation, then perhaps the officers can answer that question. While they're thinking about that, can I just clarify? So, Councillor Conti, I know you want to speak. Does anybody else want to speak after that? Oh, in the debate. Okay. Oh God, we're still in the debate.
In terms of the ventilation, I do believe there's mechanical ventilation throughout the hotel.
Councillor Conti.
It was just really, sorry, I wanted to come back actually after my initial question. It was about the capacity of the music venue. Because obviously we've got contributions from the Metropolitan Police and on CCTV, but have they just made those, come up with those contributions based on not knowing what the music venue, because I think it's very different knowing the maximum capacity is 150 people or 1,000 people, and the impact that would have on potentially policing and on the amount of CCTV that you would need, and also then on, for example, traffic and congestion and people accessing Hanger Lane. So I was just surprised that we don't seem to have any number at all in terms of what that music venue capacity maximum, I'm not saying what it is in different setups, but what the maximum capacity of that might be.
I think in terms of the contribution for CCTV, that's based more on the equipment that would be needed to be installed rather than any relation to the number of persons, for example, where those CCTV cameras would be located and the number required. Obviously, the site is on a corner site and has 2 frontages. And the request is based on the infrastructure required for that. And the Metropolitan Police, they did provide a substantiated report for their contributions as well. And again, that's just less in terms of the music venue itself, but more in terms of looking at the site as a whole. And the overall capacity of the building is, was it 378 hotel rooms? And it's looking at the package, the office uses as well, the exhibition space. It's about the package rather than specifically focusing on the music venue.
So can I just a bit of clarification? So have we got a size for the music venue specifically? Yeah, because that'll dictate a lot of this anyway. Oh, you can if you like. Yeah.
So it states in the management plan that we submitted for the cultural venue as part of the planning application, the maximum capacity is 294 people.
Thank you. That's helpful. Is this another question? Okay, Councillor Coley, use the mic again.
Thank you, Chair. One other question for clarification is obviously they'll be receiving deliveries. There might be coaches coming or minibuses coming there. Has any transport report been done as to how they're going to come in and out of the site, and what's the impact of the increased vehicle movement in the area will be?
So a delivery and service plan was provided with the application, and there isn't going to be coach bookings through this. And what else was the other question? Deliveries, and the transport assessment has been reviewed by our transport team that haven't raised any concerns.
So I think it's time to move on to the debate. So could you let me know if you want to speak? So hold on, I'll just take some notes. So we can start on this side because I've got 3 of you. So start with Councillor Kelly. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for your questions and some of the answers. A lot's been said about the kitchenette. So on one hand, it's been said we need to have bigger kitchens so people can cook because they might stay there a long time, but we don't want people to stay there because it might become a HMO. You know, that's sort of
It's in the report.
Indeed. And it appears to me, at least from the few applications I've sat on, that apartment hotels are coming more forward. So we perhaps need some training on this, and that would be welcome. But the actual kitchenette or the design, I would imagine, is going to be left to building control requirements and not actually a planning issue. So it'd be no reason to, in my view, to not grant this. Something was said about the nature of the location. I mean, it's not a sort of, it's a adulterated place already. You know, it's not like architectural masterpiece bending round. I mean, opposite there's a modern building, so that edifice of Ashbourne Parade is not as it used to be. So that's changed. This building has been here for several years. I don't know what was there before. So the parade nature of it is sort of not, you know, non sequitur in my view. And you weren't being misleading. The officer, I don't know your name, I can't see your badge, but it's 100 meters away from the station, except it's not really. It's 100 meters down a labyrinth of tunnels. So I think it's important to recognise that in the application. It'd be nicer to have seen a bit more about how, and it's not perhaps in the gift of the developer or the planning, but to see how they could improve the access through the tunnels. It's all very well saying we're going to give TfL money, but it would be nice to see a plan or an approach. I draw on my experience of Greenford Quay, where we've got a lovely development, but coming out of Greenford Station remains as poor as it's ever been, and it's got worse. So it'd be nice for that not to happen. So access to station and bookends. There is a late night economy venue in that site. There are, and I guess it's up to the hotel operator to understand whether it's viable, and they believe it is. And I would personally look forward to going to a venue that's not necessarily in Ealing Broadway town centre, something slightly out of town but still in the vicinity. So there are restaurants, you know, there is an offer in that area, and I think it will add to it. I do understand the concerns of the neighbours, but I'm not sure why. I can't see any reason why this place, and we are here to decide on applications, but I decide there's no reason that this location should not have the opportunity to have a development. You know, it's got every right as far as I can see. So there are concerns. It would be nice to see a bit more about the public realm, but I'm minded to grant the application. Thank you.
Councillor Conti.
Thank you. So I've got a number of concerns about the development. I guess the first one is in terms of the height and the scale of the building. We regularly see at planning committee that, you know, there's always exceptions to why the tall building policy in the local plan doesn't apply. And it's almost like I'm not sure really why we even have the tall buildings policy, to be honest, because almost every planning committee meeting there's a reason why it doesn't apply in that particular case. I think here, I know Manhattan Business Park and the student accommodation have been referenced. You know, I was sort of objected to both of those at the time, but you know, this is even closer to the conservation area and is actually right on the border of where it begins. And I think the impact, the further impact on the conservation area by having another tall building right on its doorstep, I think can't be just sort of brushed aside. I know they've taken consideration by trying to have this sort of step down approach, but you know, on a small site as it is, I think having that sort of step down really makes no difference. The tallest element is still very much visible and it's really very close to the houses on Brunswick Road. So it's really just a sort of a token gesture. I guess just on the Section 106 contributions with TfL, and the underpasses, I think it'd be great to see improvements in the underpasses. The student accommodation gave 200,000 pounds development. It was paid by the council of TfL 2 years ago. It's been swallowed up within the TfL organisation, and we've seen, despite Hang Hill councillors chasing it up, we have not seen any improvements. So this money's always promised. No improvements happen on the gyratory. Time and time again, it's just it's forgotten. I don't think this is necessarily going to deliver the improvements in the underpasses that TfL should do with the money that they're getting as a result of it. In terms of the offer with the music venue, look, it's great having a cultural venue. Is this the right place for it? I know it's close to a station. I don't think everyone's going to try and access it through the underground. It's an area that there's lots of sort of residential homes around it on Brunswick Road, but also on the side in the hangar in the Haymills estate. And I think there is a knock-on effect in terms of traffic and congestion and cars in an area that's already heavily congested. The council just did a traffic survey there just a few months ago, to highlight the points. But the traffic, is often running down Brunswick Road. I think this is just going to make the situation worse. It's not going to improve. So, as you can probably imagine, I'm objecting to the application.
Councillor Raza.
I'm actually. I had some concerns about the sort of blockiness of it all, but having seen some of the detail of how developers have actually tried to mitigate some of those, I think that it's no less offensive than the thing that's there at the moment. So I'm not going to say it's like, wow, a work of art, but at the same time, I don't find it too offensive the way that it's been presented in the scheme today. I am very excited about the cultural offer that this has to offer the borough, really, because there's a severe shortage of places where we can have things like open mic nights or musical venues or things like that. I did recently go to the Southwark Playhouse, and that's literally in the basement of a tower block, not dissimilar to what's being proposed here. And they're able to have exhibition spaces, music concerts, as well as having plays put on for the public. And on the ground floor, they have what's like a bar. So we were a bit concerned that it was over a tower block, being planning nerds. I did ask some of the residents who were in the bar at the time, and they loved it. They said that they actually didn't have much in the way of noise pollution from the venue, and that the beauty of it was that it was on their doorstep and they could access all that culture, particularly in conjunction with what's proposed for student accommodation. It could be a real vibrant part of our borough, where there is very little in the way of things that are going on in that realm. So I think it will be a really good addition to the borough's cultural offer, and that there is, things like you were saying, the developers were referring to having spaces for local makers and local businesses and things that they're doing as the encouragement of that activity, I think, is actually really vital. We've seen how it's regenerated and brought life back to areas like, say, Horsenden Farm, where people have got a place where they can start exhibiting their things and selling what they're making. I think from the sort of livelihood perspective and people branching out to other ways of economic activity, I think it's really important. So from that side of things, I think it's actually really quite innovative. I think it's bringing lots of new energy to an area which is perhaps a little bit sleepy. And does need a bit of perking up, so I'm minded to approve.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmood, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my opinion with Councillor Kelly and Councillor Raza, and I will not repeat what they have been said, but the two things are very important here. I know there is a pawn and consequences. There is always disadvantage when people are not very happy with the height of the building and other stuff. But if you see overall, the two things are very important to consider it here. you know, the crisis in terms of expensive workplaces where the young Ealing people wanted to start their businesses, and there's a very expensive workspaces available. So in this proposal, I could see the affordable workspaces available for 50% less than market value for 15 years, which is I think very key point. So somebody will get 50% less affordable, less than market value for next 15 years. So I think that could bring more sustainability and affordability in the borough. And on the other hand, 700 employment directly to the residents of Ealing, which is more positivity from that development. We encourage nighttime economy, and at the moment we are lacking for a cultural and musical venue, which is very good addition in my opinion. So on the basis of affordable work spaces, more employment in Ealing, and the cultural venue, I really minded to support that application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Busuttil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I find it quite strange that you would say the precedent of the height of the building is the building that's currently being built in the middle of a roundabout. You can't compare building in the middle of a roundabout to a building next to a parade of shops when the building in the middle of the roundabout actually doesn't border anything. However, on that note, you know, TIL, this is London. You know, this isn't the first time, and it's not going to be the last, where people are going to live next to structures, adjacent to structures that are taller than the ones they're currently living in. So personally, I don't see that so much of a problem. Now, the office has already mentioned that the application doesn't lie in a conservation area. If it was in a conservation area, then it would have, then the arguments I say would have more weight, but this lies out of a conservation area. So I don't think some of the arguments that's being said at this meeting right now really stand up. Now, it's been mentioned about the draft local plan. The draft local plan is what it is. It's a draft. So it hasn't been signed off yet. And until it has been finalised and signed off, then the fallback is the local plan that we currently have or the London plan. Now, Councillor Rice mentioned whether there's a demand for this hotel, seeing as there's other hotels in the area. That's not really up to us to decide. I'm sure they've done their due diligence on whether there's demand for such a facility there. And if it's success, it's success. If it isn't, it isn't. Now, for me, and Councillor Mahmood has mentioned this, so he took the wind out of my sails a bit, is the affordable workspace. Now, small businesses, particularly startups, are in dire need for affordable workspace. So this goes in a small part a long way into providing that, and there needs to be much more of that in London, particularly in Ealing, if we want to attract businesses and jobs to this borough. And lastly is traffic. Look, it's a immaterial consideration, but look, we all know it's going to happen. People, you know, with a music venue, there's going to be minibuses, there's going to be coaches, there's going to be Ubers. Yes, there is two tube stations nearby, Hanger Lane and Park Royal. Yes, there is bus stops, but you know, people's going to get to this venue in a whole manner of ways. Now, again, you know, I think the success or failure of this development, if it's agreed and if it's built, is going to be based on that, on its reviews, because people like to do reviews of accommodation these days. and this will feature in the review. So I think it will be the success or failure of this application. To be honest, Chair, I'm quite indifferent. I'm likely to vote for it, but if the committee votes against it, then I probably won't be too disappointed either. But on that note, I probably will be voting for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think finally, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I've stayed in apart hotels across the world, and I do it deliberately because I like to go somewhere just for a few days and know that I'm going to save an awful lot of money on going to restaurants, because it means I can prepare my own food and have my own food. And I've said it before earlier, is that I mean, so far I haven't even had a reassurance that there's a fridge. So if someone wanted to make a cup of tea and have a bottle of milk or a carton of milk, that just for them to have there in the morning, it's not there. To me, this does not really kind of suit my requirements when I'm the kind of person who goes for this kind of accommodation normally. And so, Councillor Busuttil's commented on my earlier comments. I mean, to me, my only concern is that we have a building there which is not going to be viable. But having said that, because I don't just want to stand there and do nothing after if it just simply this business fails. But having said that, I am excited by there being a cultural venue. I live across the road from where there used to be the Starlight Ballroom, and I just keep hearing stories about how David Bowie was there and how people like Stevie Wonder have been there, and I get very excited about the fact that trying to think back to those days and have that talent having somewhere to really grow and to nurture and to really come to be. And I just really do like the idea that maybe we'll have a new kind of little underground venue there where maybe some great big stars of the future might come to be. And so I can hope that even though I wouldn't stay in that apart hotel, to be honest, I'm hoping there will be enough people who will, in order to make it viable, so that the cultural venue does have a future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. And in all honesty, if there's issues about what the facilities are, it's partly our fault because we made sure they were minimum because we wanted to avoid that HMO issue. So on that point, I think we have all had our discussion, so we are going to go to the vote. So all those in favour? Yeah. Oh, you counted? Yeah. Okay. All those against? Okay. And did anyone abstain? Okay, well that's carried. Thank you. So I think all that's left, thank you everybody, but all that's left to be said is the date of the next meeting will be 12th of March 2025. Thank you all. Thanks.